It was telling a story in the journal about a boy 4 years old. Yeah, it was 3 or 4 years old. He had swallowed a glass of lye water, thinking it was milk. It had eaten out his whole alimentary canal. Larynx, pharynx, trachea, the whole thing. Medical science said at that time, years back, because they didn't have intravenous feedings for him, they didn't know what to do. They said, we'll have to watch him die. And one of the members of the family said, let me take care of him. I can take and keep him in good condition. They did. And for, yes, that was 3 years old. And for 15 years, this member of the family gave this boy 3 massages a day with olive oil, from the top of his head to the bottom of his feet, massaging him thoroughly. He put him in a tub twice a day so he could get water into his system. But that olive oil was massaged in, and that's the only food this boy had for 15 years, from the time he was 3 years old until he was 18. The article was written when he was 18 years of age. And they said he had a perfect body, a physical specimen that was enviable, but it had been done on olive oil. Now, I mentioned the fact before that the herb, which would be here the olive tree, draws from the earth the minerals, and it draws all the minerals needed in the human body, and it stores it up in the tree, and it comes out in the fruit, which is the oil eventually when it's squeezed. And in that is every mineral and every vitamin needed in the human body. And that's what the boy was massaged with. I've had 2 other cases where people have been kept alive with olive oil massages. This case here, I think, is so interesting because at 18 years of age, the only reason the article was written, not because the olive oil had kept him alive, but because at this time in 44 or 45, they had now discovered a new plastic that they could make a new tube down him. And so they could put in a tube and feed him artificial foods. Well, I was thinking at the time, kid would be lucky if they had never discovered the tubes, because I know he's doing all right on the olive oil, but some of that junk they're going to cram down him I don't know about. But that's the end of that story, but I'm giving you this because this is one of the oils. It used to be said that it would be impossible for anything except 1 or 2 poisons that were known to go through the skin of the human body. But now we have proven that absolutely incorrect. Well, this story itself tells that. But we have now a 3-oil massage. And this 3-oil massage is extremely important. The 3-oil massage is this: 2 days of castor oil. Now, the reason we use castor oil is that it goes through the skin, into the capillaries of the veins, cleans out those capillaries, which are generally constipated, and into the veins, cuts them loose, and even though you do not take any oil inside your body at all, within 3 days, you will find that there will be oil pools floating on the toilet bowl after you've had your BM, showing that the oil has gone through the system and into the bowels. Here we have 2 days of castor oil massage, 2 days of olive oil massage, and 2 days of wheat germ oil massage. Now, the wheat germ oil, we need that E. We need the value of this oil. That's 6 days. We rest on the 7th. I've always said it isn't just for the patient in this case, it's for the masseur, masseuse. Let them have a break. Then we repeat the next week again. All right, but here we have got 2 days, 2 days, and 2 days. And this is the day rest. Then we go back to another 2 days, 2 days, and 2 days. We then switch foods. And we switch foods from carrot juice, though all the other additives are there, to apple juice. And that'll be a week of apple juice. But we'll go through with the massage every day. We'll go through with the whole procedure. Deep breathing, and everything is going to be done the same. And then after the apple juice, we have grape juice. Apple juice, grape juice, and we go back to the carrot juice. And we keep this routine. But now each day, after they've been fed and oiled down, they're put out in the sun. Vitamin D is so important. We've got to have the rays of the sun. This is one of the most important things I can tell you now. Never have that patient go against instructions, because the instructions are, for the blonde, 1 minute front, 1 minute back of sunbathing. And sunbathing doesn't mean with fur coat and galoshes on. Get a private place and be just as brief as possible. All right, for the brunette, 2 minutes front, 2 minutes back. That sun will feel so good, they'll want to go another minute. Or a little longer anyhow. We generally recommend a 9-foot bullwhip. And this is to be used if they don't snap to. When it's time to come in out of that sun, they're out. Because we cannot afford third-degree burns. The body is not in a condition to support additional trouble. The second day, it is 2 minutes for the blonde and 4 minutes for the brunette. And we add 1 minute a day for the blonde, 2 minutes for the brunette. We can't stick to blonde and brunette because once in a while we have a brunette that will blister quicker than a blonde. And I had one blonde patient that never burned, and I couldn't understand this one either. Now you could notice by adding a minute or 2 minutes a day, 6 days a week, week after week, you're up to an hour before too awfully long. And this is important. If you don't think the sun is important, why, you've been reading too many of the national publications that say, don't sunbathe, it causes cancer. There can never be cancer made unless there's cancer there in the first place.
What would you do if, like in Minnesota, where we don't have sun and we needed this sunbathing? I mean, where it's cold yet, you know, it's really...
You'll have to get a good sun lamp. Get a good sun lamp. This principle of, yes?
I was wondering, how long do you build the time up for the sunbathing? I mean,
From here on out.
hours? I mean,
As long as you want. But I'm giving it the build-up so there will not be any burn or blister. You see, the Indian, the native Indian who hasn't eaten our garbage, well, anyhow, the native Indian goes with nothing but a loincloth on, and he never has cancer.
so if you build up to an hour on each side, would that be sufficient?
Unless you want more. Yes, sir, you can live out in the sun.
And the back, should that be given before the sun bath or some length of time after?
The bath can be given the first thing in the morning to open up the pores before we put the oil in. And then the sun bath, and if a person can take it, fine, have a bath the next morning. Leave that oil in as long as possible. Yeah. Now, as we progress along, this bathing of the body with sun, we wonder about it because articles say you'll get skin cancer. One of the early cases I had nearly 40 years ago, I'll never forget, a fellow by the name of Leonard Bailey. It's been that long, he's dead and gone, but he came to me and he said, "Can you help me? I have a severe condition." I said, "What is it?" And he unbuckled his belt, opened his trousers, and he had the worst skin cancer I've seen in many, many years over the entire abdominal area. It was loaded with skin cancer. And he said they want to graft new skin all over it. Of course, that's working on the effect, not going to the cause, but that's what they wanted to do then. And he said they can't get enough skin on my body to do it. What do you advise? I said, you're in the sheep business. Yes. How long before you go out with the flock? He had big flocks. Oh, he said, in a couple of weeks. And I said, are there people living around where you have your herd, or your flocks? No, we don't see anybody for many, many months. Well, I said, fine. If you want to follow my program, you'll be the first naked sheep herder. You'd have nothing but your boots on. And you ride that horse, but I told him how to work up to it gradually so he wouldn't get burned. And instead of having his sourdough and mutton for his meals, he had his wagons loaded with grape juice. And I told him what herbs he could use. This was in the spring. I saw him again when he brought the sheep back into winter grounds. And he was brown as an Indian, and he opened up his trousers and showed me a completely healed abdominal area, completely healed. Now what happened? The sun with his vitamin D ripened the cancer and brought it to the surface and cleaned it, cut it out, took it right off. So don't be afraid of the sun, regardless of how many articles you read. If you will start with it gradually and not get that burn. We do have another thing now. After the sunbathing, or you're doing it all the time, Dr. Ott, John Ott, many of you have read some of his articles, and he'll tell you about the sun. And the sun coming in is the healer. So spend as much time with sunlight, not looking into the sun, but with sunlight as you can. Get rid of the glasses while you're having these treatments, and you will find that it'll be a great aid. Our clothing, dress just as close to breathing cloth as you can. While you're on this program, you can wear clothes like I'm wearing, every bit of it breathes, but don't wear anything synthetic at all. The herbal fomentation. Now this is extremely important. We have what we call a formula called bone, flesh, and cartilage, BF and C. Now this particular formula has been handed down and used for a long period of time, and it's an extremely important one, but it must be used properly. Bone, flesh, and cartilage. This formula is made up of 10 or 12 herbs. I'll have to tell you how I came on to this. It was, years back, a lady came into my office and she said, I need some help. I have 2 women sitting with my 14-year-old daughter to keep her from committing suicide. She's already tried this morning to kill herself. And I said, what's wrong with her? And she says she has a horrible dermatology, a skin disease from her elbows down, from her knees down, and from her neck up. And medical science says it's a combination of pityriasis, psoriasis, eczema, and everything else they've ever found. It's almost like alligator hide, secondary infections, bleeding, and they cannot handle it. And she has had it for several years, but it gets worse, and we're quite worried about it. What can you do for it? And you know, folks, again, my back was up against the wall. Sure, I'd taken care of eczema and a lot of things like this, but never a combination as severe as this one. And I needed help. And as I do each time I have a patient come to me, or I counsel anybody, there's always a silent prayer. They don't know it's going on. But I ask the Lord to help me. In each case, I ask for help. I've learned that I am not John R., the invincible. I learned the hard way. But now I ask for the Lord's help. But nobody knew but the good Lord and myself. And He gave me the formula now, as soon as I said amen. And I wrote it down. And I said, now go out to the health stores and get these herbs and put them together and make a fomentation. I told them how to make the fomentation. And then, if it's her legs, you're going to do now, and her arms, have cotton or wool white stockings. And dip them into the fomentation, sponge them out and pull them on. Then put a plastic glove or a plastic sack over them. And the same with the neck. Put fomentations around there. And do this 6 nights a week. And do it regularly. Just have 1 day of rest on it. This was in another city. I was on tour at the time. And this was on a Tuesday, and the girl I'd seen the case, and it was the nastiest looking thing I'd ever seen. Of course, I had told them that she had to drink her 3 cups a day because this was a toxic condition inside the body. And I gave them the basics, that the bowel had to be cleaned, and the bloodstream had to be cleaned, which was our red clover combination tea, of course. I saw her Friday, and all the scales had dropped off. You could still see the horrible sores and the condition of the body. I was back in that city 6 months later, and I was asked to come in and see the case. Well, I saw the case 6 months later. This girl who had dropped out of school several years before, who was now a recluse when I had met her this time, that would not even go out in public anymore, and she had eaten herself into a big fat blob. It was a horrible thing. I saw her 6 months later. She was cheerleader on the school team, and no sores, and no overweight. She had got a hold of herself, and she was completely healed. That formula has been used on so many thousands of people, but a long time went by before I found out that it could be used for something else, other parts of the body. I found out that it would grow back parts of the body. as well as new skin. And we found out that where the kneecap was torn off, or the calf of the leg, or fingers, they would grow back again. This sounds crazy, but it works. We wonder about animals. They get shot or get damaged in various ways, and they grow back wings or legs or parts of their body. And we're supposed to be top boy on the list. We're supposed to be the top animal on the earth. And yet, the lower animals can do it. Why can't we? Well, we can. And we have case after case that has been proven. In our severe cases, we take this bone, flesh, and cartilage. We make a fomentation for the head. We take a skull cap or build one for around the head area, and 4 or 5 inches wide down the spine until the fomentation goes clear down and to the end of the tailbone. Now it must go between the legs and under the tailbone. This fomentation over the head and down the spine, where does it work? It works on the brain. It works on the medulla oblongata. It works on the spinal cord. And it starts the ball rolling. It is absolutely tremendous. We have seen this where it has been used over the head, where they have had pituitary and pineal growths on the head and ulcers and tumors on the brain. We have seen by this fomentation put over here 6 nights a week, week after week, that within 6 weeks' time, 65%, according to the medical science, of the tumors and cysts have gone. And within another couple or 3 months, they're cleaned up completely.
The girls then would have to shave their long hair off or cut it off?
No, the odd thing about it, instead of cutting the hair off, you tuck it up and put it right on, and you'll have more hair and a better growth than you ever had before. It's one of the finest hair foods there is. We had to find this the hard way. I was down in Arizona, and a woman, Bert's Trading Post, his daughter came in one day, and she was the oddest looking thing, because you look at her and you could see her skull, and she had red hair, and you could see right through the hair, and it was covered with sores. Her head was covered with sores, and she had this habit of scratching sores off while they were eating dinner or anything else. And it got so the family was ready to throw her out. But she couldn't help it. And here she had gone for years this way. Well, she wanted to know what to do, and I said, well, put the bone, flesh, and cartilage over the head, and watch what happens. I was back there on another lecture engagement months later, and she came out, and she was so happy because all the wounds, all the sores had healed within a week or two. And she had no more after 14 years. 14 years of scraping. But she had a new growth of hair. And it was coming in. And it was beautiful.
Who lost her hair after a pregnancy. And it's never, well, it's grown back thinly, but it's very thin. Would that help her?
This should help, because generally with a pregnancy baldness, it is malnutrition. It is, the woman has not known, but she's not assimilating her foods. And so here it would reverse that and feed it. It would be a good one to try. I want a letter on it. A letter on it. All right.
Would the BFNC help a muscle that's atrophied?
This is the beautiful part about it, like in polio. Yes, we have seen polio cases where the muscles are down, atrophied to a point where it was sad, have come back to their full size again. We have a case right in New York City of a man that had pulled the tendons in his knee so bad that he was told that it would be a year and a half after operations before he could even walk, let alone get on skates again. He didn't like this because he was a professional hockey player. He used the bone, flesh, and cartilage over that knee area, and in 30 days, he was back playing on the ice.
What about a polyp on the larynx?
Those polyps can be caused from various things. We have had them cleared with this. But that larynx could also, the area, could be a Mullen and lobelia combination to help, because it might be a glandular condition. And I can't speak authoritatively because I don't know which it is. But you can alternate and there'll be an answer for it.
Christopher, you say that on the fomentation you should use a natural fiber because it breathes, right? Well, how do you explain right after you put the natural fiber on, you cover it with plastic which doesn't breathe? How does it breathe then?
Well, we're doing there to keep the moisture in.
But can the
Yes,
still breathe?
it can breathe through the plastic. But this is not permanent. This is overnight, and then we have to have the following day for it to do the breathing complete. If you can get silk cloth, you know, or you can get anything that can be used instead of plastic, so much the better. One of our calls came from a lady who runs the China shop in Provo, Utah. She said her very dear friend was lying in bed helpless because she had 1.5 vertebrae completely eaten away from her spine and the cartilage between, with cancer of the bone. She had advanced cancer besides, but now she had cancer of the bone, and the bone was perforated from the atlas axis down, so they couldn't even fuse to put in that vertebrae and a half or a bone to make it so she could get up and walk or get around. Well, she was lying there helpless because she could not stand or sit with a vertebrae and a half gone, and she was just lying there waiting for death. She had some little children running around. She was a pretty sick woman, sick at heart especially. The lady said, "Can you help her?" And I said, "Only if she'll follow the program, and we won't guarantee anything, even if she does follow the program. But I have a feeling that we can." She said, "Let's go." So we did. And we used the fomentation on her back. We gave her plenty of comfrey tea to drink and comfrey tablets and so forth. We had followed right on through, and in 6 months from the time we started on this case, the vertebrae and a half had, the good Lord left the plans and specifications, and they came back just exactly like they were before, only in form of cartilage. And cartilage had brought in between the vertebrae in, and in 6 months more, before the year was out, the cartilage turned to bone. The osteopathic physician has x-rays before, during, and after. And those x-rays show from a completely ruined back, perforated with cancer from the top to the bottom. And he shows at the finish a spine as straight as an arrow and as perfect as any teenager's spine anywhere in the whole state. Now this is bone, flesh, and cartilage.
Dr. Christopher,
Yes.
would it help a person who had the polio 20, 30 years ago and his muscles are weak and wasted, but he has movement but cannot stand because it's so weak, the muscles are so weak that he cannot hold it?
Well, let me put it this way. A young fellow came in, he was in his upper teens, and he had 2 aluminum crutches, you've seen them, and braces on his arms, and and he was dragging one foot after another because he couldn't lift them. And he was told that his next place would be in a hospital bed. There was nothing more could be done for him. And in a matter of less than 6 months' time, he was walking without his canes. He was back in motion again.
Did he go into the whole program with the juices and everything like that, or just the fermentation?
Years ago, this was only the fomentation we had. We've had so many amazing cases. I'll tell you an interesting thing. You talk about the spine and the vertebrae and the cartilage in between those vertebrae. When you see a case of a man 6'4" who has gone into curvature of the spine and shriveled down to 6'3", and the spine so badly curved and locked that he's been told that he would have to have that back broken in a number of places, fused, and they knew that he couldn't live through the breaking of the back. So there was nothing they could do for him. That's good juice.
Will DFNC help a person with a fused spine?
Well, this is what I'm talking about right now. And he had this spine that was locked in place. Now, whether it had been man-fused or self-fused, but it was locked in place and it had been that way for years. 3 or 4 other young fellows came with him because he had been a sportsman. He had played all kinds of sports. He was yoga. Oh, you name it. He was an active individual, and here he was all crippled up.